You're listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Hayes,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry. Today's guest is Carl Dickson. Carl is the founder of CapturePlanning.com and Prop Library. Carl is a well-known proposal manager, writer, trainer, and coach in the industry. A career spanning 30 years, Carl has published over 1,000 articles, white papers, books, and training materials. The articles he published reaches over 100,000 professionals every week, and over 7 million professionals have visited his websites. As a speaker, Carl has presented at conferences and events sponsored by APMP, Society of Marketing Professional Services, Marketing Research Associations, Armed Forces Communication and Electronic Associations, FOSE, Deltac, Fairfax County Community Business Partnership, Government Contracting Institute, and the Washington, D.C. Office of Contracting and Procurement. Welcome, Carl, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Great, Carl. So we normally start from the very beginning, Carl, and 1,000 professionals every week, but it should have begun somewhere. So when did you enter the proposal world, Carl?
All right, well, that's going back a ways, but so pretty much right out of school, I went to school to get a computer degree. Right. And while I was in school, I had a job at a computer store, software store. And I learned to use a software package called Ventura Publisher. And mainly because it was graphical and it was cool. Right. And this was in the world of like DOS-based WordPerfect.
Got you.
I was looking through help wanted ads and I found a job doing Ventura Publisher. So went and interviewed for the job. Turned out it was some kind of company called an 8A, which, you know, they actually asked me, you know, would you mind working at an 8A? I had no idea what they meant, but I said, sure, and got the job. And as it turns out, if you're doing desktop publishing in the marketing department of an 8A or pretty much any government contractor, you're going to be working on proposals. And that's exactly what I was doing, and that's where I got my introduction. But it was actually a good place to start because I got to work with every level of the company, from the president on down, and I learned so much there, and also discovered that I could handle the stress of working on proposals. I didn't know a whole lot about proposals. I started off just doing the publishing, but pretty much being, you know, one of only 2 or 3 people working on the proposals. I was doing production and learning about what it took to produce a proposal. So that's where I got my introduction to proposals. But another aspect to my story is that, well, I'm basically a geek, a computer geek and a proposal geek. And I was pretty much there at the birth of this thing that we call the World Wide Web. I got my start before it existed. And my very first web browser was a package called Mosaic before there even was a Netscape. And all of this is really just showing my age, and the fact that, yeah, at that young age, I was playing around with that stuff. But somewhere around, I want to say 95, I started a mailing list, which online was this email thing that they had where it was kind of like automated CC list. Basically, everything that went to the mail, that was emailed to the mailing list, got emailed to everybody on the list. And you could have discussions with, you know, lots and lots of people that way. And that mailing list grew up to be about 4,000 or 5,000 people. And based on that mailing list, I started my very first website. It was called Gov Solutions. And between those, started to build an audience. And my career ended up going in the direction that it is now, between my experience in proposals and doing things that sort of accidentally ended up producing the audience that I have.
That's amazing, Carl. So the email list that the Gov Solutions, Carl, and all the way to capture planning proposals have evolved, as did you and the websites. So what has changed since you started in proposals, Carl? You have seen so much, both on the tech side and also on the proposal side. Carl, if you could share some insights, that'll be great.
Well, if I'm going to be honest about that, what's surprising isn't what has changed. It's what hasn't changed.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Right? For example, red teams. They're still mostly ineffective. We still do them anyway. And we do them out of hope because we think that we don't have anything better, instead of actually going and making things better, which is entirely possible. It just requires a different way of looking at the process. But yeah, I mean, so today, most companies actually don't have a written definition of proposal quality, right? And they're still trying to convince themselves that they're somehow working towards it. They still haven't figured out how to actually do that whole plan before you write and write to the plan thing. And to this day, most companies don't actually have a process. They have a way of doing things, and they tell themselves that they have a process. But for some reason, proposals are different from every other business function. In every other business function, they have formal quality methodologies, and they actually have a definition for what a process is and for what quality is. And somehow all of that gets left behind when it comes to proposals, because proposals are somehow supposed to be chaotic, and proposals are always a bit random because, well, our customer sometimes does wacky things and we have to adapt. But rather than having an adaptable process, we just make it up as we go along every time. And that hasn't changed since when I started doing proposals. And the sad thing, the really sad thing about all that is that companies' win rates are about the same as when I started. And if the stuff that we're doing now was somehow better, you would see a difference in the win rates, but you don't. So the way that we're flailing around, not truly getting everybody on the same page and doing things in an intentional, deliberate way, shows in companies' win rates. So today, people are still beating their heads against the wall, you know, with an approach that doesn't work, while trying to solve it by simply working harder. All right, that's how they tried to do proposals 30 years ago, and that's how most companies are still doing it. They're trying to overcome the disorganization in their environment by working harder at being disorganized, and that makes no sense. The problem, it's not the people, and the problem is not how hard they're trying. The problem is that companies haven't evolved.
That's beautifully said, Chris. So when did the Go website that you started became captureplanning.com, Carl, and how did it evolve from there?
Sure. I was a vice president at a consulting company called Optum Professional Services. And I think it shut its doors in 2000. And a year later or so, I launched captureplanning.com. I figured, you know, I've got, you know, things that I could publish and possibly have it as a side gig. And wouldn't that be cool? Still kind of young. But it actually ended up growing into my primary gig. And eventually the materials that I published became an entire end-to-end documented process. And once I had built that, I actually launched that as a separate website, and that became Prompt Library. Mm. And then Prompt Library also grew and went from just being a subscription resource about process into covering business development and capture, because you can't win proposals without successful business development and capture. So you can look at the proposal process in isolation, but unless you reach back into to capture, business development, strategic planning, and those issues, you won't maximize your success, your win rate. So Prompt Library grew to cover those subjects as well.
So you still run both Prompt Library and CapturePlanning.com, Carl? So between them, you kind of split up the contents around it. Is that right?
Yeah, and I also got active on LinkedIn along the way. So I've got a LinkedIn group with, I don't know, somewhere in the mid 40,000 members, and actually have 6 or 8 LinkedIn groups.
Wow.
But it's all part of the way I approach things, which is oftentimes more like a publishing business than a consulting business. Right. So I published the materials. I published them on my websites where I have a lot of traffic coming in, but I also put out an email newsletter, and I also do a lot of publishing on LinkedIn. That's all really about ideas. Circulating the ideas that I think can help people be more successful.
That's brilliant, Carl. So how do you plan your publishing calendar, Carl?
I've experimented with a few different ways. I've done an editorial calendar that gave me subjects that I wanted to address over the years. Right. So, looking across this year, what, subject do I want to focus on in each month? And at other times, I just do it week by week. I've got this rhythm where I have to click send on the newsletter by Sunday for the following week. Yes. So typically towards the end of the week, I'm producing that newsletter, which means I've got to have the article that goes in it. And the articles sometimes are based on a little bit of strategic planning and topics that I want to address. Sometimes I just get inspired because that's kind of the way I write. I noodle over things for a while, and eventually it's like the articles write themselves. So I'm just waiting for that moment. But I don't really have, beyond that, a whole lot of formality to the process. I just look for inspiration and let the words flow.
That's brilliant, Carl. So do you remember the very first article you wrote, Carl, and what topic was that? Do you remember?
I don't. Gotta be honest. I've got a lot of old articles. I could look them up in the database. I might even be able to find the very first, maybe.
For a person who have written 1,000 plus articles, Carl, I can imagine it's not something you would remember. But
every week, going back decades, and often it'll be 2 or 3 in a single week. But
exactly,
what I can tell you is where the whole thing got started, because it's kind of a funny story. So I was a speaker at one of the SPAC conferences in Atlanta. And I was speaking on the topic of how to improve your red teams, curiously enough. And as I'm presenting and I'm making recommendations to people, talking about the challenges that they face, I realized that you can't fix it. And once you go from the quality methodology, once you start thinking about quality criteria, then you're going from just having a review after the draft into defining what the draft should be. And now you've got a framework for a content planning methodology. And if you have a content planning methodology that defines quality as well as what should go in the proposal and how it should be presented, that sets you up with what amounts to a set of document specifications, and that's what the review team then validates to make sure that the draft actually reflects it, you can actually push that back before RFP release and build your capture and business development efforts around preparing to fill that content plan. And that's what drove the content that I created when I launched captureplanning.com. That's what drove what became the must-win process that I mentioned. Captureplanning.com was all about. And you know, week by week, I filled out that set of documentation until I had, you know, fully documented a process to do the things that I'm describing.
That's amazing, Carl. So in between running your big publishing empire, Carl, you also share your insights through multiple associations, including APMP, Carl. So can you share any memories of some contributions over the years for APMP?
Well, I told the SPAC story. The thing about APMP is the individuals. It's not the group. It's the collection of individuals that come out to the meetings, and especially for somebody like me, you know, whose business has been remote long before there was a coronavirus. Being able to get out and interact with, you know, those individuals is really helpful to me and inspiring to me, to you know, see how they're you know grappling with the challenges that they're facing.
Do you have any memorable experiences at one of the Bitcoin or any related webinars, Carl?
Did you say APMP webinars or the webinars that I do?
The APMP webinars?
Oh, I've done a few APMP webinars, and you know, I can't really think of a specific event. It's just the interaction with people, and you know, that you know, really good feeling you get when you're talking with somebody else and they're inspired by your ideas and you're inspired by their ideas, and part of you is ready to like leave the event right now so that you can go try things.
Yes, that's amazing. So from your own webinars, Carl, what stand out from your memory? I'm sure there'll be few.
It's really humbling to have people showing up at your events, and they're saying things to you like, I've been reading your stuff for years and years, and I finally have a chance to like actually meet you. Yes. And I'm like, really? I'm not all that, okay? I'm just a person. I'm just like you. I don't even know how to handle that kind of interaction with people. I don't have the right makeup to be a celebrity. That's for sure. But yeah, I've had that. I've actually had people come up and introduce themselves to me as you know, a groupie. And they did not mean it in the same way they would say it to rock stars. They just meant that, yeah, they follow all of the stuff that I publish.
That's brilliant, because you have been a pathway to APMP to a certain extent, Carl, because 100,000 subscribers and APMP has close to 10,000 members, which clearly tells, you're 10 times bigger. And you have also laid out the pathway for people to learn, for over the years, for 20 or 25 odd years now, from 1995-ish, to just give people continuously the words of wisdom, inspiration, and everything. I think that means a lot, definitely, to so many people. So thank you, Carl. So looking at all the achievements so far, Carl, if you can list like top 3 accomplishments for your life, which 3 would you pick?
The development of the must-win process. The project that I'm working on now, which is actually called Must Win Now, which is taking the process in a very unexpected direction.
Right.
And the article production that I've done, the content production.
Definitely, Carl, definitely. So that's it. So I think, Carl, you already shared a lot more. So let's kind of chill out a little bit with the rapid fire questions round.
Okay.
All right, Carl. So the first random question we have for you is, what is something that you have that is of sentimental value?
People. I'm not a very materially focused person. All right. But people matter, and people are worth being sentimental about.
Yeah, well said. Are there any particular people that you have some sentiment for?
Well, naturally, my wife and children, but they don't really count, right? Because they,
They count the most, right?
I'm being snarky because we're talking about being sentimental.
Absolutely.
But absolutely. I mean, family.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. That's beautiful. So looking back, what was the best year of your life and why?
The next one.
Okay.
I'm not a backward looking person. All right. I'm not nostalgic. I'm all about creating a better future and what I'm doing, to achieve that.
Yeah, it's a great perspective. So I know you like to look forward, but we always have the present. If you could eliminate one thing from your daily schedule, what would it be and why?
Eliminate one thing from my daily. I don't really have a daily schedule, but let's see. Taxes and accounting.
Absolutely. If I could eliminate that from my life. Would you rather lose the ability to read or lose the ability to speak?
Probably speak.
Okay. And any particular reason why?
Because I don't want to lose the ability to learn. And if you are speaking, you're not listening. And one could argue that you're not learning as much as you could.
Absolutely. Yeah, learning is so important. And that's something that I think is one of your mottos, or something you're known for thinking is, so why do you think learning proposals is also learning about yourself?
So doing proposals is about far more than pushing paper. And when you're in the middle of deadlines, and you're under-resourced, all you can think about is pushing the paper. And one of the ways that my weird career path has benefited me is that it gives me a chance to sort of step back and look at that, right? And to realize that there is actually a broader connection between life and proposals. Proposal management, it's really about problem solving and managing managing expectations. Okay. But so are relationships. All relationships involve heavily problem solving and managing expectations. So the way that we interact with people in proposals probably shouldn't be any different from the way that we interact with people in the rest of our life, including our personal life. Winning proposals, it's also about creating success for those that you want to accept you and work with you and partner with you. That's also true in life.
Absolutely.
People in your life that you are trying to do things with, all right, you need to create success for them, just like you do in proposals. And when you start creating success for people and interacting with them, you know, in a way that is, let's just say, that doesn't contradict your values, whether it's at work or in your personal life, you know, it makes a difference on how things go for you. And growth is necessary for life, but it's also the key for corporate and career success. There is no opportunity in a contractor, no raises, no new staff to be hired, no assets to be purchased. There's no growth that does not, or I'm sorry, there's no, you know, none of that comes without growth of the company. That means that the proposal function is at the core of all of the opportunity in the company. That's also true in your personal life. All of the opportunity that comes to you in life comes from growth. And what you learn about and do in proposals is relevant to achieving growth in your personal life. I'll do one more. All right. Lying. Lying is the dark side of the force. All right. It's both seductive and evil, just like it says in Star Wars, right? It's also very powerful, just like it says in Star Wars. So you have to be really careful crossing that line. And that's true in proposals as well as in your life. But a career in proposals teaches you where that line is. You pay more attention as a result of having worked a career in proposals and having been brought too close to that line too many times. And what you learn from that experience is relevant to your personal life.
Oh, absolutely. And what an amazing perspective. You talked a lot about things that relate to empathy and how you described how proposals are similar to our daily lives. Can you please share with us why you feel proposals are applied empathy?
All right, so there's a lot of talk about empathy out there, and you know, you can read the definition and you can say, oh yeah, that's a good positive sounding thing. Unless it's applied, it has no impact. Empathy without impact is kind of a useless thing. But working on proposals, all right, one of the most important aspects of a winning proposal is producing something from the customer's perspective instead of your own. To produce something from the customer's perspective, you have to work on your skills of empathy. You not only have to research and ask them, but when you sit down to write, you have to be thinking about what are they going to do with this information. Even if you believe that the proposal evaluation process is a mechanical exercise in scoring the proposals, which it can be, you still have to imagine what the evaluator has to do in order to process the scores. And you have to reformulate everything you were thinking about proposing in the context of what the evaluator's experience is going to be reading your proposal. So you not only have to have some empathy, you have to do something about that empathy and all of the challenges in the application. So, it's one thing to say that, yeah, we should have proposals are the success of proposals is driven by our relationship marketing and customer insight. And those words create no change, right? Companies have had those words since the start of my career, and they still do a lousy job of developing their customer insight. But so part of what I do is to take an idea like applied empathy and now turn that into the practical language of how to accomplish that within proposal writing, and doing that in the, shall we say, challenging work environments that a lot of proposal specialists find themselves in.
Yeah. All right. So what's the most interesting thing that you've read or seen recently?
I've had a lot of discussions with people related to this pandemic situation that we find ourselves in. And I've read a lot of really interesting stuff that goes beyond simply testing or no testing, or quarantines or no quarantines, and really get to the heart of what people have to do as people to manage and live in this environment, and how you can push past the whole fear of the circumstance we find ourselves in, and actually learn things about yourself and come out of it a better person. So it's interacting with people remotely to do it. So you said reading, and I'm thinking, okay, well, it does count as reading if it's like comments, posts, and emails, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very interesting time we're in, and all of the stuff out there. It's just, it can almost be overwhelming, but it is interesting to see the varied perspectives and to kind of reflect on, what do we actually think is true, and how are things going to play out? And we really don't know. And it'll be interesting to see where things go for sure.
It's the whole topic of how do we as people deal with situations where we don't have enough information.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God, that connects to proposals.
Right.
We never have enough information.
Yeah,
maybe that's why I think those thoughts.
Yeah. You seem to be able to tie everything back to proposals, Carl.
I think like that. I admit it.
So Carl, with all of the success that you've had over the years, I'm sure you've had some great influences in your life. Who are the people who have been the most influential in your life, in your career?
So I mentioned that 8A company where I got my start in proposals. So the two people that I worked most closely with there were Pam and Terry. And I taught them desktop publishing, and they taught me life. And we the three of us did lunch almost every day and talked about everything under the sun, and it was an incredibly rewarding experience, and I have a lot of gratitude for it. Some other people include Carrie Ratcliffe. Carrie is amazing. I don't know if you've met her or interacted with her. She is just as much of a proposal geek as I am. Our conversation,
hard to imagine.
Yeah. Our conversations are truly inspirational. And let's see, Bob Kelly. Bob Kelly is a capture manager, and he has been incredibly supportive for me, and he helps me. He asks a lot of questions, and that ends up helping me get things right in the real world, right? Because I'm not beholden to a particular way of doing things. I am very interested in winning,
Yeah.
and figuring out in different circumstances what that's going to take. Somebody else, how about Mike Parkinson? I think pretty much everybody in APM knows Mike Parkinson.
Absolutely.
And he and I go way back. I consider him a friend. It's really fascinating how he's approached things, from a visual communication perspective. And I've approached things more from an information construction approach and the process of writing. But it's very interesting how both of those approaches often end up at the same place. So
very cool. And what about in your life?
Oh, wife, kids. My wife Diane is literally my other half. I mean, like mentally, spiritually, and in all ways. So she makes me a much better person, and and that, of course, ties back into proposals and makes me a better proposal manager.
Absolutely. It sounds like you really have a great support system at home, and that really does make an impact on how you can be in the workplace as well. So over the years, I'm sure you've also received some great advice, as well as the advice that you shared on with us. What's the best piece of advice that you've received, and who did you receive that from?
How about the worst piece of advice?
Sure.
It was to cut my hair. Horrible advice. He'd say things like, well, if you don't cut your hair before you're 30, you won't be able to. Both of those were complete BS. Although I still have my young hair, my long hair, I would be completely comfortable cutting it all off and going bald just to try the opposite extreme. It has no impact on my career whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree that hair has no impact on how effective you are as a proposal person. So the last question in kind of our gratitude round here is, what is something you've observed lately that reminded you that people are good?
When you see, in spite of all of the challenges that happen in the proposal environment, people being under-resourced, people not cooperating, people being a negative influence during reviews, people making it up as they go along, people saying things like, well, you know what, I can't tell you what I want the proposal to be, but I'll know it when I see it. In spite of all of that, you still see people who will do something good for somebody else that they didn't have to do. It's important to have that. It's important to have that as a light at the end of the tunnel, to remember that the proposal environment doesn't have to be a negative thing. There are good people, and you can be a good person no matter what's going on around you, even if you're working on proposals.
It's a great positive message. And I think, it's a great way to kind of end our gratitude round.
Great, Carl. Carl, I'll just ask you one thing, Carl. Carl, what tip would you give to me, Carl, to grow my hair? My hair doesn't grow as long as yours, Carl. Mine just not even grows it. So do you do special, Carl? I mean, I love your hair.
So it's, for me, it's just low maintenance. It's all it's ever been. Right. So like my hair is like a medium length. It's just a mess.
Right.
And back then it wasn't cool to be bald. So I grew it out and then forgot about it. I don't think about my hair. So yeah, my advice wouldn't be to grow your hair. It would be to do something that lets you forget about it.
Ah, that's nice. So you've been having this long hair for a long time, Carl, or did it happen a few years ago, or has it been there part of you for like 20, 30 years?
You know, I started growing my hair out when I was at ASG, which was my first job working in proposals.
Right.
Wow.
Never
So
really thought of that, but yeah, that's true.
like 30 years ago?
Yep.
Oh, wow, Carl. So do you travel often, Carl? And do you have a favorite place?
I don't really, well, I live in my favorite place. But and traveling really depends on customer engagements. I go wherever they want me to go. If they want me to go to Nebraska in January, I go. But most of the time it's places in the Washington, D.C. area. You know, big surprise there. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, which is how probably the real way that I got my start in proposals. But yeah, I don't really enjoy traveling because of the, you know, all the hassle that goes into it, but I don't really mind it either. So I go where I need to be.
Oh, that's brilliant, Carl. So what are your top three favorite food, Carl?
Top three favorite foods. Probably what I make myself for breakfast, just like a Greek yogurt, blueberry, and walnut thing. Probably stir fries and sushi. Yeah, sushi has to be on the list.
Oh, wow, nice. So do you cook as well at home? Is it any favorite dish that you're famous for at home?
No, I'm a lazy cook. So I have my techniques for making large amounts of food quickly that is good enough, and you know, that's my whole approach.
God, yeah, I think you keep it simple. That's great. So, what's the scariest thing you have ever done for fun?
The scariest thing that I've ever done for fun. Okay, back in when I lived in Washington D.C. area, I went to Great Falls, which anybody up there will recognize, and I went to something called the Billy Goat Trail, which most people will recognize. And yes, it is. I probably had somewhere between a half dozen and a dozen near-death experiences on the Billy Goat Trail. Just imagine like rocks high off of the ground and cliffs and jumping and sliding and so on. I was not at all being reckless, but.
Oh, that's amazing, Carl. So you are planning to have an amazing dinner party of your life. Which three historical figures, past or present, would you add to your guest list to keep the dinner talk interesting?
Well, I might want to lead with Ayn Rand, but if we're talking about keeping the dinner talking interesting, then she might not get along with pretty much anybody else. So, you know, if I have to invite three people, she might have to fall off of the list. Although I'd love to have a conversation with her. Let's see. I might go with a whole series of them. Like you could do like the founding fathers, right? And get like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and some of those folks. You could intentionally invite the ones that didn't get along with each other if you really wanted to have fun. But you know, they were polite people, so I'm sure that they would be able to pull off a dinner party. They were actually better at it than we were. Other people to have an interesting dinner party with historical figures. Geez, narrow it down to a century for me. I'm not sure. To be honest.
That's okay.
I would seek out people with, interesting ideas. People that I could learn from. People who would help me look at things in a completely new way, or even think of being in a completely different way. And then I'd figure out how to apply it to proposals.
Let's stay away from proposals for a while, Carl. So, what's your favorite sport, Carl? Do you play sports, or do you watch? Are you into sports?
I have zero interest in sports. None whatsoever.
No, has it always been the case from being childhood and grow up, or is it something that happened just after you became very, very, very busy with publishing?
It's always been the case, and it's because I'm too competitive.
Oh, right, that's interesting.
Because winning can be achieved in many different ways and ruthlessly, intentionally, and when it's required. I am all about completely demolishing, destroying, without any chance of salvation, my opponent.
Wow.
But why would you waste that on a friendly game of sports? It's only called out when it's really needed and relevant. Shouldn't be wasted.
That's very profound advice, Carl. So, if you were a Star Trek character, Carl, which one would you choose?
You know what? I'd probably go with McCoy because he was crotchety.
Really? That's nice. Right.
Seriously, of all the ones, of all the characters, he had the most fun.
So true. So, final question. What's the wallpaper on your computer? Do you change them, or is it always the same?
Oh, the wallpaper? I don't even know. It's probably black or the default.
Oh, wow. You are a man of such simplicity. I should have picked it up the moment you said sushi. It took me a while to get there.
I never look at the wallpaper. It's whatever app I'm using.
That's good. That's good. Yes. So, what's next for you, Carl? Considering you had a successful publishing career, consulting, speaking, what's next?
I'm going to blow it all up. Seriously. I recently discovered that the entire proposal process as we know it is obsolete. And it might be a contributing factor to why, things haven't really improved in all of these decades. The proposal process is going to get replaced, and it's just a matter of time now. And it won't be by an AI, right? So you can put that fear out of your head. But what will replace the proposal process will be the user interface. Stick with me for a minute. So the way that we interact with the proposal determines what our success is and determines whether we cooperate with it. It's not the steps, procedures, etc. It's how we interact with things. And in fact, most of the steps and procedures on proposals are not sequential, if only because the customer does things out of order. Okay. So we need to call up certain functions or features of our toolbox when we need them, and we need to be able to apply them, but we got to know how. So there's like this training thing, but classroom training, well, it's better than nothing, but it's really not the most effective way of learning, and everybody knows it. So what would be better would be if in the moment of need, we had the guidance to accomplish the task that we're trying to do. And since everything is now not only online, but remote, okay, and will be pretty much forever, because this is a stepping stone towards our future and not a destination. So the way that we interact with information and people and tools and training and resources, how that is designed matters more for whether we get the most out of the people involved than does a process. So the process is obsolete. It's going to be replaced by the user interface. Now all we have to do is figure out what that user interface should be. And that's what has my attention these days.
Sounds like a very powerful initiative there, Carl. So thank you so much for your time today, Carl. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been a real privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. Wish you all the good health, happiness. Please continue to inspire bid and proposal industry colleagues and everybody around you. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and keep inspiring, Carl. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.